Thank you, everyone. Quiet, please. Haven't used that for 4 years, so I thought I'd give it a crack. Good evening, everyone. My name's Patrick Hull. I'm the Mayor of the City of Canning at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 15th of August, 2023, and I welcome one and all to the Ordinary Council meeting of this month, and I declare the meeting open. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land, and also pay our respects to elders, both past and present. And can I ask all here present this evening to please make sure your mobile phones are turned off, especially councillors, and for the duration of the meeting. This meeting is being live streamed via the city's YouTube channel. Council meetings are public meetings, and any information you provide shall be recorded and may be made publicly accessible. The council chambers are not a parliament, and parliamentary privilege does not apply. Elected members and staff risk being held publicly and personally liable if their comments are defamatory or breach any duty of confidentiality. Statements made during council meetings are solely those of the person making them. Nothing expressed at a council meeting can be attributed to the city unless it is adopted by a resolution of council. The confirmed minutes of a council meeting are the official recording of that council meeting. Verbatim minutes are not required. Nevertheless, the city publishes a recording of the meeting. And recording of council meetings must not be copied, republished or reproduced without the city's express permission. At item 2, attendance, I'm very pleased to say that we have the full City of Canning Council in attendance, thank you. Approved leave of absence, there are none. Disclosures of interest, CEO Michael Littleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to item 3.1, declarations of financial interest, I have received one from Councillor Paul Tuchek. In relation to item EN 01523, the item is the award of tender RFT 03-2023, Street Furniture Services and Advertising. The nature of his association is that Thrive Real Estate is owned by Paul and Karen Tuchek, and they currently have 5 signs in Willetton with Y-Stop. In relation to item 3.2, declarations of impartiality, I've received none.
Thank you, CEO. At item 4, announcements by the presiding member without discussion. I actually do have something I'd like to talk about tonight. Councillor Sarah Sabiri, front and centre. Can I just say a few words? Just stay where you are for the time being, Sarah. I'd just like to pause for a moment to announce that Councillor Sarah Sabiri, our colleague, my colleague since 2017, has announced her resignation from this council effective 27th of August, and tonight will be her final council meeting. Sarah, personally, it has been an absolute pleasure to serve with you on the City of Canning Council, first as a councillor back in 2017 and obviously more recently as the Mayor, and I know that all the councillors present here this evening would share that view, that it certainly has been a pleasure. Sarah, I'd like for the public record that you have been a committed and faithful servant to residents in the Beeloo ward, and I know that your close work with the community, particularly with the Wilson Residents and Ratepayers Association, has been deeply appreciated. You maintained consistent views on waste management, the environment, and many other issues that you instinctively knew were important to our residents, and you championed those issues on behalf of residents with vigour and passion. Councillor Sabiri, Sarah, having played a key role in governing this local government district for almost 6 years, you leave the city in a position that you should be immensely proud of. History will show that under your stewardship, this year the City of Canning Council delivered a balanced budget with an operating surplus, a significant achievement given the financial position we found ourselves in some years ago, and it's the first time that we've achieved that milestone for a considerable period of time. On behalf of Council, we applaud and celebrate your contribution to this city, and your name will be forever etched on the honour board which commemorates the community service of the men and women of this Canning district over the past 152 years. You should be immensely proud of your time here. Good luck with your new role, Sarah, and congratulations on your appointment. You will always be welcome here in this place. Round of applause. And I'd like to invite you to say a few words, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you. I didn't think I'd be so actually emotional. I'd like to start by saying it's been an absolute honour to serve as a City of Canning councillor. It's been a privilege to represent the people of the Beeloo ward. I feel it's an astounding feature of our Australian democratic system that I could be elected as a representative in local government. I arrived here as a young adult 20 years ago and have made this country my home. Australia is a country that rewards those who seek to contribute, and for that I am forever thankful. The City of Canning has been my home for most of the last 20 years. It's an area I love for our beautiful river and our unique natural areas. I also love the incredible cultural and linguistic diversity that is such an outstanding feature of the City of Canning. Tonight marks a bittersweet moment as I announce my resignation from Council. Having served on Council for nearly 6 years and having won at 2 consecutive elections, my decision to resign comes after much careful consideration. It has been a great honour to serve the people of the City of Canning, and this decision comes about as I am relocating to Southwest to take up a new employment role. I don't believe I would be able to fulfil my commitments to Council, the people of the Beeloo Ward, and the City of Canning while commuting. I am also mindful that the timing of my resignation allows for an informed contest for the positions in the Beeloo Ward at the October 2023 local government elections. My tenure has allowed me to contribute to critical decisions and advocate for issues close to my heart. I look back on some of the achievements I've contributed to, launching discussions at council level about microplastics and raising awareness of their impact on human health, advocating for a sustainable approach to waste management, the city's homelessness plan, and halting the bus route through our precious wetlands. It's been a privilege to be part of the decision-making process. To the people of Canning, especially Beeloo Ward, I want to thank you for supporting me. To name a few, Fountain College, the Sea Scouts, Cannington RSL, Wilson Ratepayer and Residents Group, Cannington Punjabi Club, and of course the passionate environmental organisations like Queen's Park Bushland, Wilson Wetlands Action Group, and the Canning River Regional Park Volunteers. To my fellow councillors, I will genuinely miss our interactions, and I wish you all continued success and the very best for the City of Canning, an area I will always consider my home.
Thank you, Councillor Sabiri. I'd like you just to step forward for a moment. I've got a small token of our appreciation. If anyone would like to take a photo with their phones you just put away. Well done, Jesse. I'm very sorry to see you go, Sarah. Good luck with your new role. In regards to, we moved to item 5, reports of delegates without discussion. Does any elected member have a delegate report they'd like to table? Thank you. We move to item 6, question time for the public. Responses to previous questions taken on notice, there are none. At item 6.2, we do have a number of questions tonight. I open public question time now. The time is 6:09 p.m. We have questions from Mr. Trevor Whitred of John Street in Bentley, and we also have questions from Mr. George Beecroft of Civic Gardens. Mr. Whitred, can I invite you up to the lectern, please, and I'll get you, please, to read your 3 questions one at a time, and then I'll ask for the relevant director to provide a response.
Hi everyone.
Just introduce yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Trevor Whitred from John Street in Bentley. My 3 questions. The first one is regarding the Bentley 360 development plan for the Northern Parklands. I'm just wondering what information the council might be able to share regarding the current status of that development. The second question is...
I'll just go to the first question first, Director.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Bentley 360 is a significant opportunity for the state government to deliver high-quality infill development, supporting affordable housing and facilitating broader urban regeneration in the Bentley area. Due to a range of complex issues, the project has yet to be delivered. The future of the project is currently being assessed by the state government, with opportunities for the broader community and key stakeholders to provide input on the future of the site and development timeframes to be confirmed in the coming months.
Thank you. Your second question refers to BP Bentley. You're talking about Albany Highway there near the La Plaza Bentley? That's the
Yeah,
site?
it is, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
please read your second question.
Oh, yeah, well, that question is just around the site's currently sitting empty. It's been vandalised and it's got some branding around environmental problems with the site. Just wondering if the council has any info on what the future holds for that site, if it's going to be turned into another petrol station again, or if there's any environmental issues that the local residents should be concerned about.
Thank you. Director?
In response to that question, the City is not aware of any plans to develop the site. The City has requested the landowner to remove the signs you refer to from the building and has been liaising with the landowner to secure the building when not in use. The Department of Water and Environmental Regulation has registered the site as contaminated remediation required, and their website displays a publicly available summary of the contamination status of the land, so you can obviously access that. From this public document, it would appear that the contamination of soil and groundwater has been historically documented and ongoing environmental investigations and remediation is required. Again, further information on the specifics of the contamination can be obtained by viewing the department's website at www.dword.wa.gov.au.
Thank you. Mr Whitred, your third and final question.
Yeah, the third and final question is just regarding Manana Park, the redevelopment there in Queen's Park. The budget's just recently been adopted, and we're just looking for the timelines on when that might start, the redevelopment might start, and when it might be completed.
I see the question you submitted just talks about the fact that it was adopted by council, but it has been delayed by budget constraints. I'll just get the director just to clarify the situation in relation to that. Director.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Unfortunately, the project was delayed, but not due to the city's budget constraints. The project was delayed due to the city not receiving the pre-election commitment from the federal government for $5.3 million to enable the delivery of the Queen's Park Open Space Master Plan. That funding was through the Priority Community Infrastructure Program. The City has rebudgeted to undertake the project this financial year, pending execution of the funding agreement with the federal government. We're hopeful that the project will commence in 2024.
Just to clarify, we were ready to go on the project. We're just waiting for the money that was promised in the last federal election to be delivered, and it's been 18 months now and we're still waiting. So unfortunately that has delayed the project. It was supposed to have been delivered at the time that the State Football Centre was opened, and it's regrettable that that didn't happen, but we're hopeful that the money will soon be, the funding that was promised will be forthcoming, and then we can get on with the project. Yeah. Thank you for coming along.
Okay, thank you.
Mr Beecroft, welcome and good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and good evening, councillors. Firstly, Mr Mayor, I'd like to express my surprise and disappointment over
That's not a good way to start.
At your announcement that we're losing Councillor Saberi.
That's better.
She is by our local councillor, and she has always been one that we could talk to, and she has listened, and she has represented us very well. Thank you very much for what you've done. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Mr Beecroft.
Mr Mayor, what I'm here for is I live in the city centre and received a letter from the council, proposed payment in lieu of parking plan, which means that developers, instead of providing a parking area, may pay $3,500. And my questions refer to this. I've got two questions, and the first one is a question about the question. Really, it's asking, do you agree with this? And really, the question should be, do you agree with subsidising developers' profits at the expense of the City of Canning ratepayers? Because that is how I see this proposal. And my question is, this survey is being done mainly for the benefit of developers, which it will benefit developers. How much is the survey costing? How much has been allowed for the survey?
CEO, are you able to answer that, or Mr Bride?
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, that survey's been developed in-house, so it's all done with officer time. There's no outside external cost to that.
Thank
Fine.
you. Your second question?
Okay, just further to that one, this survey only came to the residents of the city centre. It is our belief, really, that this affects the whole of the city, and it is on the website. The form that you fill in should be some notification, really, out to the ratepayers their opinion on this. My second question is there is a theme that runs through this the proposal, and that is that the city will be supplying car parks, because we're going to have a hell of a problem with car parking in this city, and if the developers don't have to supply the amount of parking spots they should, then the city is going to supply car parks. My second question is, does the city own any land for these car parks in the city centre?
Director Bryden.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, the parking plan does cover this Canning City Centre and Queen's Park, because they're the areas where there is demand for parking above and beyond what is found in other parts of the city. In terms of the development of the parking areas, there's a lot of on-street parking available if it was constructed throughout the city centre streets, and there's new roads that are being constructed at the moment. So there's capacity for around an extra 400 on-street bays to be delivered using the road reserves throughout the city. So the majority of the funds that we will get, should developers pay a cash in lieu component, and that's only if council is accepting of that. So the developer should, the first port of call is to provide the parking on site in certain circumstances where council believes that's appropriate to receive a cash in lieu payment for a small number of bays. The city needs to advertise the parking plan, which is the one you're responding to, which identifies what the city can spend the money on. So the majority of the funds, if council collects, will go on to constructing on-street car parking bays. So we don't need to buy land. It's a case of just constructing on-street bays within existing road reserves or new roads.
This, according to a rumour, I don't know if it is a rumour, will
Don't ever listen to rumours. So we were reviewing the parking in that whole city precinct, but you would know, Mr. Beecroft, you know, there is a very little parking in there, and we meet regularly with stakeholders, including the centre manager of Westfield Carousel, to discuss the issues that are there. And with the $400 million investment in the new railway station elevated rail, we see significant issues with parking in the area, and most of that is affecting the restaurants in there and the small businesses in that precinct, the ones on Cecil Avenue, that can't get customers in the door because a lot of the parking that is available right now has been blocked up by people that are actually parking there all day to avoid the possibility of paying at Westfield Carousel, or to avoid the very small fee for parking at the railway station. And they park there all day, blocking up those available parking bays. So we are just reviewing it. Nothing's come to council yet. We're asking the CEO and the officers to review the parking and come back to us with a report. And this survey is part of our consultation and collaboration with the city, and I think it demonstrates, you being down here today, that there will be some interest in it, but mostly I would think from people close by. But I do take and note your comments. Thank you.
Just a couple more seconds, Mr. Mayor. Just an example of the parking problems. 100 metres from here, we have a set of units, which are 27 units. When they were built, they were given 0.7 of a parking bay for each unit, which for 27 units works out at 19 bays. Over the weekend, there's a vacant block next door to these units. There was 21 cars parked outside these units and on the vacant block. Now that vacant block's going to be developed, and heaven only knows where these 21 cars are going to go to. So I agree with you 100%, we are going to have a parking problem.
Yeah, we do.
And I'd like to see the whole of the city have a say in this. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for coming down, Mr. Beecroft. I think you'll give your brolly a workout on the way home. It's a bit wet, isn't it?
Sorry?
I think you'll give your brolly a workout on the way home. It's a bit wet outside, isn't it? Thanks for... I saw it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Beecroft. We'll move on to item 7. Thank you, councillors, which is confirmation of minutes from the ordinary council meeting held last month on the 18th of July. The officer's recommendation is the minutes be confirmed, and the recommendation is on page 2. Can I have a mover, please, for that recommendation? I'll move it from the chair. Councillor Bain has seconded it. Let's put that to the vote, councillors. We're missing one vote.
The confirmation of minutes has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. We move on to item 8, which is the receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. At item 8.1, petitions, there are none. At 8.2, presentations are at none. At item 8.3, we do have a deputation this evening from Sian Mawson. Would you like to come forward? Thank you. We know who you are, but please, just for the sake of the recording, just state your name and your address, and then please go ahead. You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Good evening. My name is Sian Mawson from 86 Gibbs Street, East Cannington. I'll be speaking about motion CD 012 of 23 regarding the boundary for the environmental conservation classification of the Ranford Road bushland. At the May 2023 Ordinary Council meeting, one of the decisions made by Council was to amend the reserve classification on Lot 500, 81 Ranford Road to environmental conservation. My interpretation of that decision is that areas with the natural vegetation still standing would be reclassified. However, my interpretation is not reflected in the options presented to Council tonight. I acknowledge that option 1 does achieve my interpretation, but I also acknowledge that it takes things a bit too far. Option 2 comes closest to reclassifying the native vegetation without going overboard, but I still find that option falls a bit short. There are small areas of native vegetation to the northwest of the boundary that are not protected. If they are not protected, does that mean that they can be cut down at a later date? Ask yourself why they have not been afforded the same environmental classification. If your interpretation of May's decision was, like mine, that all the natural areas on this site would be protected, I urge you to reject the options presented and propose a new alignment for the northwestern boundary before it's too late. Ensure that the decisions made by this council are enacted in the way our community expects. And thank you for your time. I would ask Mr Mayor that this item be brought forward for the convenience of those in the gallery.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Item 9, applications for leave of absence. We've received none. Questions by members of which due notice has been given. Without discussion, there are none. Items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery. Just in respect of the request by Ms Mawson, I will actually just petition and bring forward CD 012 of 23, governance. That's a consideration of environmental conservation boundary to inform scheme amendment at lot number 500 in brackets 81 Ranford Road in Canning Vale. Thank you. We'll bring that matter forward. Hello, Mr Johnston. How are you? Thank you. Reports of committee meetings. There are none. Reports from the CEO at item 13 and 13.1, Mr Michael Littleton. There are no reports from the Office of the CEO this evening, so we move on to the first report, and that will be, as we have just decided, that will be item 13.3, which has been brought forward, the responsible officer being Mr Graham Bride, the Director of Planning and Development. It is, again, I'll repeat it, CD 012 of 23, the title of the report being Consideration of Environmental Conservation Boundary to Inform Scheme Amendment at Lot 500 in brackets number 81, close brackets, Ranford Road in Canning Vale. The amended officer recommendation is on screen, and the recommendation also appears on page 66 of the agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that matter? Councillor Spencer Teo and a seconder. Deputy Mayor. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move option 5, which I circulated to elected members and staff earlier.
You can't move option 5. We don't have an option 5 yet, do we? Governance?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we have received an option 5 from Councillor Spencer Teo, and we will have that on screen now.
In respect to that, that's not an amendment because it hasn't been put.
It's not an
Governance, can you
amendment.
explain to me how we end up with an additional option without putting an amendment?
Because the officer's recommendation at this stage does not specify which option, and Councillor Spencer Teo's option 5 can be submitted and be appended to the minutes to clarify the additional attachment. So we had spoken with the CEO on this, and being that there is no actual option being put forward by the officers, therefore specifying option 5 does not constitute an amendment.
I just want to being a stickler for the rules, can you point to the standing orders? I just wonder why that's not being. So if that's a recommendation that hasn't been put by the officers, if this is a different recommendation, that is that the recommendation is that it is a new option, which is 5, shouldn't that be dealt with as an alternate motion? And can you point to the standing orders?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is not something covered under the standing orders, and as I previously mentioned, our interpretation is that the officers have not provided their recommendation as an actual option. Yes, I admit option 5 is not currently form part of the attachments to this item, but option 5 would be published if council carry this as part of the minutes.
But if it's not a matter of the standing orders, I mean, if it's not actually covered by standing orders, the standing orders state then that it'll be at the discretion of the mayor to make that ruling. I'm not certain why governance has made a ruling on this outside of the council chamber, and I don't say that to be disparaging, but that's what the standing orders actually say.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. If you choose not to accept that, as the officer recommendation with an option 5, that is up to you as the presiding member of this meeting. That is just simply the advice that the CEO and I discussed.
I've been really firm on alternate motions that I won't. No, but I have. There's no point shaking your head. I've been really firm on. Well, I'm going to rule that it is an alternate motion because it's not the officer's recommendation that's been in the agenda now for 2 weeks. I haven't actually seen your option 5. I haven't seen it today, so I haven't actually seen it. And I just think it's unfair to add another option, and I think it should be obviously entertained but dealt with as an alternate motion. The councillors can see it on the screen. If you'd like it considered as an alternate motion, I've got no issue with it. But I've been really firm on this that, I would consider that under the standing orders I have a discretion to make a ruling based on this because it's not covered by standing orders as alternate motions are not. So it would be a foreshadowed alternate motion. That is how I believe it would need to be. Governance, can I take your final advice on that? That's how I read the standing orders, that the discretion would be mine.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, let me just say at the moment we have a mover and a seconder for an option 5. So going forward from where we're at this point, we would need both the mover and the seconder to withdraw the current motion as it stands and then somebody else to move option 1 to 4, if that is your ruling.
I don't believe if we replayed the tape, I didn't. I put the motion as it is at the moment to council and asked for a mover for it, and Councillor Spencer Teo then raised her hand and said she'd like to move an option 5. I think the deputy mayor had already put his hand up and seconded before Councillor Spencer Teo said I'd like to actually move option 5, and then I called the meeting to order and queried how that could possibly occur. I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. I don't think Councillor Spencer Teo put her hand up and moved option 5 because I wasn't aware of option 5.
Again, let me clarify that if the deputy seconded, at that stage he didn't understand what he was seconding then if Councillor Spencer Teo hadn't stated option 5, because the officer recommendation does not state an option.
I'm not going to get bogged down on this all night. Let's just get on with the meeting. I will take your option 5. I take the advice. Look, my role here is to listen to the advice of governance and to consider my position. I was firm of the opinion that I'm right in that. I hope that in future these matters come to me for a ruling and I'm not told what the ruling should be. That is the prerogative of the chair. But while I will entertain the option 5 as it's been put, and the deputy appears to have actually seconded it, so that, and I also take governance's counsel on the matter that at the moment we haven't got those options on the table. They are not part of that recommendation. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to make a comment that it was my understanding...
You can't make a comment, Councillor Sweeney. You can ask a question.
Well, I'm going to ask a question, if you want to call it a question. But it was my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that there was an agreement, there was a general agreement that we wouldn't allow late amendments. Now, this is the first time I've even heard
allow
of
what?
option
Blatant
5.
what?
This late amendment, or this an addition to what we have in front of us from the officer's recommendation.
It's not, but look, at the end of the day, Councillor Sweeney, I've made a ruling on it. That is the ruling, unless council wants to propose that that ruling be overturned. That's the ruling, and I don't think it's such a big issue that we need to spend a half an hour on it. And that's just to be honest, because at the moment, what would actually happen is, if I took your point and actually rejected it at the moment, Councillor Spencer Teo can quite rightly propose an amendment in 5 minutes' time, even after speaking in favour of the recommendation, because anyone can do that. So it seems to be a moot point. Arguing any further.
Don't reply to that. You're asking me to consider something tonight that I haven't been fully informed with.
I haven't read it myself. And I stated that clearly, and that's the issue that we've always had with presenting things to council, at the 12th hour when people are busy and making their way here, and we haven't had an opportunity to see it. And I say that absolutely honestly. I haven't seen your option 5. I've got no idea what you're proposing. So, and Councillor Sweeney clearly hasn't seen it, but that's what happens when you propose these things at the last moment. So that'll be council's decision on the matter. So we have Councillor Spencer Teo has actually put the motion. I have the Deputy Mayor has actually seconded it. Let's get on with debate. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, councillors, I move that we support option 5, which thank you to Director Bride and his team for meeting with me yesterday and created a separate map. And I did distribute it early this morning to elected members and to staff. As you can see from the map, if I could just ask governance to go to the other one, it is option 2 with the addition of a few square metres of vegetation, which coincidentally is exactly what Ms Mawson was referring to. So it's just those 2 little yellow bits there that just slightly extend the boundary, which is along the fence line that's currently there anyway. So anyway, last time we debated this, we were given a choice between a road or the environment. This council by majority chose the environment. Tonight, I'm surprised that we're now being asked to essentially choose between a waste transfer station or rubbish and environment, when realistically, with a bit of forward planning and thinking, I believe that we can do both. I'm not going to rehash all the arguments in the past. I think they're still fresh enough in all of our minds. But a decision was made by a majority of us here to rezone this entire area as bush forever. And this should be about how we set the boundary, not what is more important. Option 2 and 5 maximise the area of conservation. It protects the most significant areas of bush forever, and it allows us to revegetate where it's most needed. It also creates a much needed buffer between the waste transfer station and the dense bushland. Metronet took a large portion of well-established, highly significant bushland, and for reasons given in previous debate, we can't keep slicing and dicing this land in the name of development, especially when with some strategic planning, we should be able to maximise the conservation and development of the entire area. The other area on the other side of the waste transfer station is massive. There's an abundance of land. I can't understand why you would want to keep a small windy service road unless you wanted to clear more bushland. That is something I just can't sit back and accept. So therefore, councillors, I ask that you support option 5, which, like I said, is essentially option 2 with a tiny extension to incorporate another 3 or 4 established trees. So if you liked option 2, this is obviously a slight increase on that. It's nothing significant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo. Deputy Mayor Ben Kunza.
Look, thank you. Look, I support option 5, which is similar to option 2 with a little bit added to it. Back in May, Council made the decision not to proceed with the Jandakot Eastern Link Road and instead save some of Canning's last remaining Banksia woodland, which is extremely important to the many animals that reside on the Swan Coastal Plain. Now, in considering the options, the intent of Council's decision was to rezone the land to environmental conservation, and option 2 or 5 best aligns with that decision. Now, Council sought to amend the Metropolitan Regional Scheme, and whilst I recognise it's a lengthy process, we should at least attempt to change our local planning scheme to meet the objectives of the May meeting. Option 4, although preferred by staff, has the exact same potential issues as option 2, and 5, given it involves land in the JELR MRS reserve. Option 3 does not match the intent of Council's decision in May, and it will simply amend the zoning of the land south of the JELR alignment, which was not proposed to be touched anyway. By choosing option 5, we can look at an area in Canning and also rehabilitate any degraded parts to ensure local wildlife have an area removed from human activity. As a local government with a low rate of tree canopy cover, we need to ensure that we act and not just talk, and also have an opportunity to provide a protective area for wildlife. Now, if the concerns raised in the report with respect to inconsistencies with the MRS come into fruition, even though we're initiating the process to amend the MRS, then we can deal with that later. We don't really lose anything by trying with this option. Further, if there's any issues with respect to the waste transfer station and potential encroachment, again, this is a lengthy process and there will be opportunities and time to deal with that. We have substantial positive community response to our decision making in May, and by proceeding with this option, I believe we're listening to our community.
Thank you. Councillors, I'd like to move a procedural motion under 10.1 in brackets A of the standing orders, and that is that debate on the motion be adjourned to the December 2023 meeting. And I'd call for a seconder. I have Councillor Jacobs as the seconder. Thank you, Councillor Singh. I saw Councillor Jacobs' hand first. And I'll just speak to the reasoning behind that. Thank you to Councillor Spencer-Teo and to the Deputy Mayor for their comments on this matter. Look, this is a massive decision for us. This is a really big decision. And I know that I didn't support the previous council decision, but this is not about this. This is about some of the things that we've just heard. And in one of those was about we need to ask questions about why the city would want to keep a small windy road through that precinct. Well, there are a lot of answers here that we need to find, a lot of questions here we need to find answers to, and there's absolutely no doubt, and I take up the position of Councillor Spencer-Teo, yes, there are commercial realities here, and yes, we have environmental concerns, but I think that we can find a balance here. I think that we can find a balance, but we need to understand how can we find a balance. This council is still at the moment dealing with our waste to energy contract that was foisted on us by the commissioners at a time before any of us came onto council. And I'm really, a little bit concerned that we have an election at the moment, about 9 weeks away, and there's a possibility that we could have significant changes in personnel on this council. And I just don't think that this big decision needs to be rushed through tonight when that land has been sitting there for 60,000 years, and I don't understand why we need to rush through without knowing all the facts tonight. I think the CEO is just requesting a bit of time to provide a little bit of context to us, and I think decision making is about understanding all of the narrative around a big decision. And have no doubt this is a multi-million-dollar decision that will not only bind a future council, but councils forever, because once that conservation order is placed over this precinct, that is binding on this council forever, and that's a good thing. We want to protect the area, but we need to understand exactly what area we should be protecting and how we can actually balance up our financial responsibility as councillors here to deliver an outcome to the community that is actually going to understand the commercial realities of what we must do as a council, but also the environmental value of the site. And I know that we can do both, but we can't do both by rushing this through tonight. And even this evening, you know, in the 12th hour, we have a different option has been put this evening. And thank you to Councillor Spencer-Teo for explaining it, but I haven't seen it before. I haven't been given any understanding of it other than what I've been told tonight. I haven't had an opportunity to talk to the officers here who actually wrote the report to understand whether or not they would agree that we should undertake that new plan and what the implications are for this council. And it seems to me that other councillors here haven't had the opportunity to also see and understand that. So surely, council, we can put this off for 4 months, for 16 weeks, and come back in December with a clear understanding after a briefing from the CEO, because the reality is, regardless of where you are sitting in this debate, this is a strategic waste precinct, and it has always been. And we currently have a number of big councils that are actually using that precinct at the moment. We talked earlier about FOGO and the future of that and how that might work on this site. And we also have been dealing with Westport and the state government's deliberations about how important this site could be, not just to the city of Canning, but strategically on a state basis. This site is of statewide importance. That's how strategic it is, and that's why we need to, you know, be thinking far more than just the environmental concern tonight. As councillors, we must think about the commercial realities that also come with the decision we have. If there is an opportunity that we can actually conserve that piece of land and also provide a valuable contribution financially from the remainder of that site for millennia, then we should adopt that, and we should do both of those things. But we can't do that if we don't understand how that can be achieved. So, councillors, this is not about about anything other than making a decision that you feel is right tonight. But again, I would say, please don't race down that rabbit hole of running to a decision. The council decision that we made still sits. I'm just saying that we should defer the final debate on this until we've had the opportunity to hear all of the facts delivered from our CEO. And then we come back into this room as a collegiate council with all of the facts in front of us, and we make a decision. And it might be the same decision, but I wonder how we will be judged as a council if, knowing we don't have all the facts tonight, we still press ahead with this decision tonight with no reason to do so. So I would ask you just to support the adjournment for 12 weeks so that we can come back in December this year and make that decision. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Just a question. How will that work, considering the officer's recommendation actually asks for a report to come back in September? Why would you not just amend it to say the report comes back in December?
I haven't considered that other than just to defer it. I've spoken to the CEO, and I can't see any reason why we couldn't defer it as it is. CEO.
Look, I think the matter in front of council is a procedural motion to adjourn consideration of which option it contemplates. So that is the matter that council is currently determining now.
So, sorry, I was looking for the Mayor's rationale.
I don't have to give you a rationale other than what I've just given you. You're asking me, so the September date would then be moot. The decision would be that it would come back in December.
What would we be debating on? The report, the scheme amendment, to then come back?
It's an amended option at the moment. The resolution that's in front of you
tonight. It's not
an
amended option.
It's an amended officer recommendation. That's
not
what you have in front of you.
We've already established that.
I can only say again that what we're dealing at the moment is the procedural motion. You might want some clarity on that. I'm not able to provide it other than I'm asking for what we have in front of us to come back in December. And you've asked your question. I can't give any more clarity on that.
How will that work when the officer recommendation clearly stipulates that a report would come back in September? So we're going to debate on an item in December for a report to come back 3 months earlier. It doesn't make sense.
CEO.
Sorry, if I'm understanding, councillor, if this matter is, if the procedural motion is supported, then there will be no presentation of a report into September. The matter will be presented again in December. So that is the purpose of the procedural motion that the city is considering. If the decision is that it be adjourned until December, that is the next time this matter will come to council.
So then what would the officer recommendation be in December? As it is here? It couldn't be, could it?
Governance.
Sorry. The council has sought some additional information. That is the context that the procedural motion has been moved. We would still required, as you know, to present the information as it sits, but we would obviously then provide some additional information to provide context to council to inform its decision in December. What the extent of that information would be, I'm unable to say at this time.
Thank you. We'll put the matter to the vote. Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you. Look, ultimately, I think this whole decision is going to be taken away from us anyway. But the question I've got is, I just wanted to, just for clarity, so I get some better understanding here. I think Councillor Spencer-Teo said she met with Director Bride about this option 5. I'd like to know, is the city now making this their preferred option? Is that what they're recommending? Is the city recommending option 5 now?
Director Bride, I'll allow the question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, that's not the city's recommendation. We're only acting on the city or the council resolution back in May to bring this report forward. In the body of the report, we've obviously identified that the city officers would prefer option 3 or 4, but we're acting on council's direction to prepare an amendment. We've come to council and advised that there are some options and where that boundary should be drawn, and that's up to council to make that decision.
All right, so Mr Bride, your position hasn't changed on the subject?
Councillors, we're not going to take... Thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor Sweeney. Look, we need to resolve the procedural motion. I won't allow any more questions at the moment unless they're specifically relevant to the procedural motion and not the report in front of you.
10.2, no debate. Can we just put this to the vote as port 10.2? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, let's put the vote on the procedural motion.
The procedural motion has been carried by an absolute majority with 7 in favour and councillors Bain, Saberi, Spencer-Teo and Deputy Mayor Kunze voting against.
Thank you, councillors. I look forward to the matter coming back in December. We move to item 13.2 on the agenda. I am going back to the start. You're right. Thank you. We're going back to the start, which is 13.2. Ms Keely Haywood, the Acting Director of Corporate and Commercial, is a responsible officer, and it's CC 016 of 23. The title of the report being Land Optimisation Investigation for 96 Barbican Street, East in Shelley. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 5 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover for that item, please? I'll move it from the chair then. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Hardeep Singh. Councillors, I speak in favour of the officer's recommendation. I think the disposal of 96 Barbican Street in East in Shelley makes sense. There was some talk earlier about public open space, but the reality is the site has actually sat there as a childcare facility for about half a century. It hasn't been for a little while, but it's very close. It's right on that periphery of that area, that suburb, basically right on the curtail of Leach Highway. It's in a very busy precinct, and I think that the proposal put to us by the officers, as has been previously discussed by council, makes sense to me. So I agree totally with the officer's recommendation. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the officer recommendation, and I thank CEO for presenting us the recommendation which optimizes the value of this site for all of City of Canning. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor Holt. Look, I'm not supporting the officer recommendation, which would be to sell the land and transfer the proceeds into the land building development reserve. Sorry, Mayor Holt, I can't agree that it makes sense. I know I circulated a proposed amendment yesterday, but I'm not moving it. As the CEO noted himself in his email today, if the derived funds are not used for a commercial purpose, then we probably shouldn't retain the land. We should probably retain the land, sorry. With total respect, I find this proposal in complete contradiction with what the administration put to council and our community only 18 months ago through draft policy LP 16, which was led by the city's own public open space strategy. You only have to scroll later down the agenda to the submission in response to the draft Western Australia Planning Commission report and read that in June 2015, the City of Canning public open space strategy was adopted. The strategy provides a comprehensive overview of the current status of POS in the City of Canning. Specifically, the strategy includes recommendations in each suburb of individual parks to better provide for the needs of the community. The strategy identified 4 suburbs where additional land should be purchased for public open space through the land use planning system. These suburbs were St James, Bentley, Rossmoyne and Shelley. To facilitate the provision of more POS in these 4 suburbs, the city developed a local planning policy that brings in the findings from the strategy into the local planning framework by providing a framework for the contribution of POS by new subdivision development for the subdivision and development of that is 3 lots or dwellings that are greater. Now, it's therefore surprising that council would subsequently sell one of its few pieces of land in Shelley in an area that doesn't have sufficient public open space and also does not have access to playgrounds within 400 metres, a key philosophical position under the city's play provision strategy, and then simply place the funds in a reserve for an unknown commercial investment later down the track. If this was a private landholding for sale and we had accrued funds through LP16, the city would be exploring purchasing this land for public open space. Instead, it's our land and we're looking to sell it. If you're unaware, the city's play provision strategy was only adopted in 2020 as a primary objective to ensure that residential lots have access to playgrounds within 400 metres. If that's not possible for varying reasons, then investments should be made to provide better public open space or playgrounds within proximity. Now, most of Shelley, as well as that part of Riven and adjacent to where the land is geographically placed, is in an area where there is no local playground. We're supposed to be finding these opportunities for playgrounds, not disposing of them. Now, in answers to my questions, it was stated that Shelley Beach Park would meet the needs of this area with respect to playground provision. However, the play provision strategy clearly articulates that district-level playgrounds are not to be provided as a substitute, they're to be provided in addition to local playgrounds. Further, the strategy states that families should not have to cross major roads, such as Leach Highway in this instance, to visit a playground that would be required in this case. The strategy was designed by staff with considerable community involvement. Local playgrounds enable young families to access playgrounds nearby and older kids to venture out on their own to have fun without needing parental supervision. Now, there's 2 relevant strategies that were designed by the administration and endorsed unanimously by council that have plans to meet these deficiencies: the play provision strategy and the Shelley Rossmoyne Foreshore Management Plan. Unfortunately, both of these plans don't have the necessary funding attached to meet the objectives in the near term. The play provision strategy seeks to find new locations for playgrounds where there are gaps, but it also states that both Shelley and Riverton need an additional 2 playgrounds to meet current demands, not future, current. There are no formal plans to where we're going to meet these deficiencies. The city's going to go look for land to meet these deficiencies or invest into current public open space. Now, this land here, up until recently, as the Mayor stated, was a child health centre. It was zoned as civic and community. Now, in the event that the land is sold, then I think it should be invested in meeting the objectives of these strategies. However, it should be retained, and that's my fundamental final belief, because the city is going to be looking for these locations in the future. Why on earth would we be selling it now? I've always been pragmatic on the city's land asset strategies and have supported land sales in the past, even those that were ultimately rejected by a majority of council. However, that's because I agreed with the propositions that were put forward in those cases. In this case, however, I believe the city will be wanting land in this area in the future, and so I ask council not to dispose of it now. You have to think about the future and what our current strategies argue.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Sweeney first, and then I'll go to Councillor Spencer-Teo.
I'm just looking at this. I do have a small amendment. If I could propose that, please, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, what would be the amendment?
The amendment would be to amend Part 2B of the officer's recommendation, which would read for sale instead of private treaty by a public auction in accordance with the Local Government Act.
I'll just get you to run through that again. So it's, did you say B?
So 2B.
2B.
Yeah.
And just read that through. So
engage a licensed real estate agent, that all stays the same, to market the 3 lots for sale by public auction. So remove the 2 words there, private treaty, and replace those 2 words with public auction, in accordance with Section 358 of the Local Government Act.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that amendment? You want to second it? It's up to you.
I'm happy to second it.
Councillor Jacobs has seconded it.
It's purely to give the councillor a bit of a platform to...
Governance, I'll just ask you, that's fine, thank you. Thank you. Governance, I'll ask you just to make that amendment and put it up on the screen.
Yes, Jesse.
Thank you. Yeah, the second was Councillor Jacobs. Councillor Sweeney, I'll ask you to speak to your amendment, but only to the amendment, the virtues of public auction over private treaty. If you just restrict your comments to that, please.
Yes, thank you. Councillors, these are 3 very, very high value and highly sought after residential blocks. They're not commercial blocks or industrial blocks where we've sold these type of properties by private treaty before. These are residential and sought after blocks. Selling by private treaty undermines transparency in the sale process. If it's not transparent, it becomes suspicious, and that's what is perceived by our community. It also allows for sometimes manipulation and manoeuvring that reduces public trust in the process. It gives a perception of favouring a specific individual or business, leading to public scepticism about the sale process. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Spencer-Teo is making all sorts of noises while I'm reading this. It's starting to become irritating.
That's all right. Can I just call you to order? Yeah, okay. If you could just, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Sweeney, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So selling by private treaty gives a perception of favouring a specific individual or a business, and it can lead to public scepticism about the sale process. But most importantly, it doesn't always ensure that the property fetches the best market value, as the negotiations are in private and not in a competitive environment as it would be in a public auction. The advantages of public auctions, it offers full accountability and ensures the sale is conducted fairly and impartially. It attracts a wider pool of potential buyers to achieve a stronger and more competitive price. Thirdly, and again, very importantly, there is a current housing crisis at the moment. WA has the highest rate of homelessness in Australia. There are families with the financial capacity to purchase homes for their families, but are unable to do so because of their limited supply. So they have to wait. And in the meantime, these families sleep in their cars, on the street, at shopping centres, or have to rely on families or friends until something becomes available.
I just need you just to stick to the auction question. We're just amending the officer's recommendation, not speaking to the motion. So this is just about, as I said, the virtues of public auctions versus private treaty.
It's exactly what I'm doing. So selling the residential...
Sorry, I'll just hold you up there. That's not what you're doing. You're now actually debating the motion, talking about the homelessness crisis. So if you can just make your comments relevant to the amendment, or just save that up for debate on the motion proper. You can speak again once we get back to the substantive motion.
So finally, selling the land through a public auction process gives back to the community, and it provides an opportunity for everyone in the community to place a bid on the day, fairly and transparently, instead of the city privately negotiating or privately dealing with a specific individual behind closed doors. So let's open the sale of these blocks by public auction process for the benefit of the entire community, councillors.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I don't have an opinion on the matter. I just wanted to give Councillor Sweeney a platform to further explain his rationale. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Singh.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a couple of questions regarding.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Question to the CEO. As part of the public auction, could you please confirm that the city has the right to set a reserve price? And part two of the question, if the reserve price is not met at the auction, what happens after that? If you could please clarify that process, that will be helpful. Thank you.
CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Singh. Yes, we would have the capacity to set the reserve price. If the reserve is not reached, then we can decide to negotiate with any of the unsuccessful bidders, or alternatively, we can go through a private treaty process.
Thank you. Look, I'll just speak against the amendment, only from the point of view that, well, actually, I don't know where to start. So generally in terms of real estate, the city has obviously a whole range of options to it, and we have people here who are licensed real estate agents, and I've actually been a licensed real estate agent myself, but you can have offers from. So when Councillor Singh asked about setting a reserve, well, the city would advertise offers from a price. And we would actually set that price, or the city would set that price, and negotiations would continue from there. I don't hold the view that we are going to get a better outcome just because we go to auction. The auction rate in Western Australia is not 100%. Every auction doesn't end up with an outcome on the day, but it actually costs money, thousands of dollars, to hold and market an auction. And so if the auction doesn't work out on the day, and we don't have an auction sale on the day, notwithstanding that the auction clearance rate in Western Australia is nowhere near 100%, the city is up for all of those fees, and then we still have to put it to the market. This talk about secrecy and privacy, look, a lot of what the city does here, the negotiation behind that is done behind closed doors is done necessarily. It doesn't mean it's secret, and it doesn't mean it's actually improper. I just don't think...
Point of order, Mr Mayor, if I can just interrupt you there, because I didn't use those words secrecy or privacy.
First of all, I actually don't support your point of order. Secondly, you need to tell me what part of the standing orders you actually wish to call me out on as a point of order. And I'm not actually doing a rebuttal here. I'm actually speaking to the motion. And frankly, I can pretty much say what I want as long as it's factual. So you made a certain number of certain claims there that, well, you actually said we will end up with a stronger and more competitive price. You said that word for word. You can't just put... Councillor Sweeney, you've been on the council now for a number of years. You must now know that when another member is speaking that you cannot speak over them. So I'll ask you, please, to be professional and just hold your tongue until I finish speaking. So in regards to this matter, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is nothing more than Russian roulette by jumping to this public auction model. I'm not certain why we would do that. And we have had previously in previous councils a number of former councillors that have got this thing in their mind about public auctions are the only way to go. But I can tell you, it is Russian roulette. We cannot guarantee that the property will be sold on the day, no matter how hot people think the market might be. If we don't have 3 interested parties on the day, the properties are passed in and we have to go back then to private treaty. So I would encourage us to stay with the officer's recommendation, which is the safest way to go, allow the officers to actually set a price, an offers from price, and deal with the matter as we always have, or mostly have, by private treaty. That is how the majority of property in the state of Western Australia is sold, by private treaty. And there's very good reason for that. Councillor Singh.
Can I just answer? Can I make
Councillor
a comment
Sweeney,
now?
you can't just butt into a conversation. I've just called Councillor Singh to speak. So please turn off your microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Singh.
Another question for CEO. As part of the auction process, usually it's been seen that finance approval is not applied, which means it's only cash offers. If this property goes as per public auction, is city applying those sort of conditions, or will it be exactly same set of conditions as private treaty? Basically, the difference is, will city accept finance offers? It's a real estate practice.
Look, we would need to consider, if the decision in front is supported by council to go with public auction as opposed to private treaty, we would engage with a real estate agent and look at what conditions we would set for the auction. Invariably, there would be a requirement for somebody who comes to the auction to be able to actually settle the property. That is largely what happens, but we'd need to take some advice from the real estate agent. Obviously, the officer's recommendation is that we proceed to private treaty for the reasons that I think have been already stipulated.
I'd like to just ask a question myself, and I see I've got Mr. Connor in the here in relation to the question of public auction. If the city was to sell try to sell the property by public auction, we are still bound to sell the property. The real estate agent still gets a percentage of the sale plus the cost of the auction. Is that right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's my understanding.
And I ask for your considered opinion on the cost of an auction for 3 separate properties, because they would be sold as 3 separate properties. So can I get some sort of educated opinion on what that may cost?
Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't have a specific figure. It would obviously depend a lot on the specific agent, but obviously you would be doing it, well, there'd be 3 individual properties, so there'd be 3 separate charges or separate fees. I wouldn't want to speculate specifically on what the cost would be.
Well, just in relation to that, then, are we talking about hundreds of dollars, or are we talking about the cost would be thousands of dollars per property?
My understanding would be in the thousands.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Sweeney, you've got a question?
Yes. I would prefer, Mr. Mayor, if you didn't misquote me. I never said the words privacy.
Councillor Sweeney, can you please understand and read the standing orders? You can only ask a question at the moment.
I'm asking a question.
You're not asking a question, you're making a statement. Ask your question, Councillor Sweeney.
I would like to ask you a question about Section 358 of the Local Government Act. After your comment about it's Russian roulette, is Section 358 of the Local Government Act, does it contain an area where we can sell and dispose of property through public auction? Or am I just shooting the breeze here?
I don't think anybody said that we couldn't sell by public auction. CEO, there's no issue there, is there?
No, look, the matter for council to consider is it public auction, is it private treaty? Both are supported under Section 358 of the Act.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter before we put the amendment to the vote? We're just going to speak to the amendment. Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo, I can see you waving over there. Thank you.
Thank you. I speak against the amendment because I don't support the sale of the block. And irrespective, if I did, I would have every faith in the real estate agent to do the right thing and get the maximum price. As Councillor Sweeney said, it's a very sought after area. Properties do not stay on the market long and it's highly competitive. So I would not have any issue with the private treaty, but I'm not supporting the amendment because I don't support the sale.
Thank you, councillors. Let's put the matter of the amendment to the vote. If you support the amendment, you are voting yes.
Amendment CC 1623 has been lost with one in favour and all other councillors voting against.
Just reel through who went against. So
Councillors Bain, Councillor Jacobs, Councillor Parkinson, Saberi, Sekon, Singh, Spencer Teo, Tushek, Deputy Mayor Kunze, and Mayor Hall voting against.
Thank you, Governance. Thank you, councillors. We move back to the substantive motion. If the matter is resolved by council tonight, it will be done by private treaty if that is endorsed. We have the matter has been moved by myself. I spoke. Councillor Singh was a seconder and has spoke. The Deputy Mayor has spoken. Has anybody else wished to speak? Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't support the officer recommendation. In fact, I have to say incredibly disappointed I am with this recommendation. It's disappointing because once again, strategies that were authored by staff and consultants appear to be overlooked or worse, only used where and when it suits. I have to say it really leaves me wondering why we even bother spending so much time and ratepayer money creating and endorsing these strategies in the first place. Honestly, no matter how I look at this, I cannot see how this recommendation even remotely benefits the community or addresses the shortfall of playgrounds and public open space in Shelley or the Riverton area. It most certainly does not support the intentions of the POS or PPS strategies. In fact, it's a complete contradiction. I mean, we are being asked to put the needs of the community 7th out of 8th on a priority list here, and to ignore 2 strategies. Mr Mayor, if that makes sense to you, then I'm even more disappointed. To sell a piece of prime real estate in an area deficient in public open space, which we've all agreed to, and allocate the process to a building fund to be spent anywhere. I mean, really? Where are we going to spend these funds? In Shelley? In Riverton? Queen's Park? Exactly. So, of course, Councillor Singh says it benefits the entire City of Canning because it's very likely it's not going to be reinvested into the local area. In fact, it's not mentioned in the report. And that leaves me wondering why on earth I would support something that disadvantages a community with a demonstrated need. It makes no sense. If this officer recommendation delivered real, tangible outcomes for the community and complied with at least one of these strategies, I probably would support it. But all I see here is another 3 homes. Yes, Councillor Sweeney, it may address the shortage of homes, but I might remind you there is a building crisis as well as a housing one. And what is that going to create? 3 homes being built in an area of high demand for public open space and playgrounds that won't even have a backyard. Also that we can fund infrastructure and buildings somewhere else. No thanks. I'd rather leave the land sitting there, appreciating until a recommendation or motion is presented that actually provides some localised benefit or addresses the public open space deficiency. So I'm sorry, in this case, it's all wrong, and I'll be sticking with the public open space and play provision strategies, and I won't be supporting this recommendation.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Singh.
Question to the CEO, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Two parts of my question. I'll go one by one. First one, this lot, the subject lot, has an address of Shelley, but it is located in a geographical area that it forms more part of Riverton because of the Leach Highway barrier. So if there is a park constructed on this lot, is it true that it will be more used by the Riverton residents as compared to Shelley residents? Is that right?
I think that's a bit subjective. I might just ask...
Just pass that to Mr O'Connor.
Mr O'Connor, I'll ask you. The CEO is directing that I refer that question to you. You heard the question?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, I did. As mentioned in the report, yes, it is literally on the boundary because of Leach Highway. It would geographically form an extension of Riverton, albeit it is a Shelley address. So I couldn't specifically comment the intentions of the residents about from people versus Riverton versus people versus Shelley, but given it is an extension of the Riverton suburb, it would be highly likely that that would be the primary catchment.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, you said you had a
And
follow-up.
thank you. Second part of my question. So given that geographically it's part of Riverton, and Riverton is not short of public open space as per table 3, that's right? It's in the report. Table 3 says it is not short of public open space provision.
Just your
Page,
question.
is that, I just want to confirm, page 9, table 3.
Ms Hayward? Oh, sorry. Chris?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yeah, as stated in the Public Open Space Strategy report, there is no shortfall in terms of the amount of public open space, but the report does also acknowledge that in terms of walkability, 400 metres to a local playground, that part of Shelley, Riverton, there is a deficiency in that 400 metre walking catchment.
Thank you. Did anyone wish to speak? Councillor Jacobs.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I've listened intently to both sides of the argument, and I'm ready to give my take on it. I think with consideration, the area's high density, it's right next to near Leach Highway. I know how much young families, especially in my area, appreciate parks that are very close to them. I think that if we leave it, we're effectively banking it as a land value that we can tap into later. So to get the money for something that we don't really need the money for, the critical thing for me is that we don't have a park within 400 metres. And I just, in my time on council, I know that residents really, really, really value the ones, especially with younger children, the closer the park, the better. So I think I can't support this. I would like to take the money, but because we're deficient to take the money and then later we need to spend the money to get a park, it sort of sounds, it's counterintuitive. I think we need to keep it. I think later on, my intent would be to develop it as at least a micro park. But I think for today's debate, I'll just say no. Let's keep it. And even if you want to get the money later, you've still got the land should a future council want to do that. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jacobs. I'm going to go to Councillor Secon first, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. I don't support the officer's recommendation today, so I'll be voting no. As a frequent user of the parks and playgrounds in the Riverton and Shelley area, I have first-hand knowledge and experience of the demand for more, if not bigger and better recreational facilities in that community. As a mum of 3 young kids who are 4, 6 and 8, an active volunteer in my local community through my associations with the Parent and Citizens Committees, as a board member of 2 local primary schools, I can confidently attest to the lack of playgrounds and public open spaces in the area. It's a topic that keeps coming up when I catch up with local residents and families in the area, taking into account population growth in these areas as well. As Deputy Mayor Kunza said earlier, the play provision strategy mentioned that we will have a deficit of 2 playgrounds, and I strongly agree that the deficit is apparent today. Therefore, I hope that this comes back to Council in the near future with a recommendation that supports the play provision strategy and the needs and wants of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another question to the CEO. If this land is kept to make a park in the future, given that the long list of land assets we have within the city, where does this parcel sits in terms of priority? It will require funds to make it a park. Do you see that happening in near future, or will this be down in the priority list and it'll be few years? I would like to get an idea how long this land will be sitting empty before we can invest to make it a park.
CEO, you able to address the question from Councillor Singh?
It's a bit of an open-ended question. It would be low on our priority list. I mean, at the moment, this parcel of land has been on our land optimisation strategy. So it has been identified as a parcel of land that we should contemplate, a different purpose for. So arguably, it would be low on our priority list. But obviously, that is a decision that council can make. I think our current focus is on improving and renewing the current playgrounds throughout our city. We have a clear strategy to do that, and our investment in playgrounds and parks has been unprecedented this year. There is a clear strategy for the city to continue to focus on play provisions for the local community. This strategy was actually premised, or a decision that was included in our land optimisation strategy, and the city had, or council had asked us, or that strategy had asked us to look at what the commercial opportunities were like and whether this land could be utilised for that purpose.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, and then I'll come to Councillor Bain.
Sorry, I thought the land optimisation strategy, as opposed to the previous commercial land asset strategies, was to look at potential social, environmental and commercial uses for land. It wasn't a commercial basis. I thought that was the whole point of putting it on the land optimisation strategy, was to look for whether there was an environmental purpose, a community purpose, or a commercial purpose for the land. It wasn't to ask for a commercial purpose, necessarily.
CEO?
Well, maybe Mr O'Connor can...
Mr O'Connor, are you able to respond to that?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, certainly the 2020 version of the land utilisation plan, yes, did broaden the focus to make sure that we're assessing all the values associated with the land, including environmental and social. That is the part of the land utilisation framework in the plan. That analysis has been done within the optimisation investigation, and it's been balanced against the current zoning of the land and the potential to derive a financial and also economic outcome as well.
Thank you. Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, just following on from the Deputy Mayor's question. So if the officer recommendation is declined by Council tonight, what is the city's next step or intention with the land parcel? Will it just go automatically back to the land utilisation plan and sit in stasis for a significant amount of time?
Yeah, I think the short question is that if we don't adopt the officer's recommendation, the status quo remains and the parcel is not sold and it stays as it is. But Mr O'Connor?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, we would effectively be holding or land banking the property until an alternative proposition was brought back to Council for consideration, whether that was another commercial or economic outcome that may balance the park and the open space requirements, or whether it was purely a decision around making it more of a community or an operational asset.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before I close debate? Councillor Sweeney.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to speak for the officer's recommendation, and I'm kind of confused a little bit somewhat by the councillors from Bannister Ward in relation to comments that I've heard about prioritising the suburbs in their ward, which is Shelley, Rossmoyne and Riverton, because when you look at the play provision strategy, those suburbs, the way I see it, are way, way down on the list. And if we're talking priority on this list, the suburb of Canning Vale, 7 playgrounds is the shortfall. That has to be built over the next 2 years. And that's a long way away from just only 2 playgrounds. In fact, Rossmoyne has an oversupply of playgrounds. So I'm really not sure whether or not this list has been circulated or whether or not the councillors from that ward have been seeing this list, or I might be seeing this list wrong, but I've got it in front of me now, and it says that the priorities for these playgrounds, Canning Vale, 7 needs to be built. After that, East Cannington, 4 need to be built in East Cannington. After that, Queen's Park, 3 need to be built there, and Parkwood. So there are a number of other suburbs that take far more priority than the suburbs within the Bannister ward. So, you know, at the end of the day, I think that I am speaking for the officer's recommendation, and I think that the recommendation, the officers know what they're doing. It's in line with the long-term financial plan. There is already capital expenditure for refurbishments and upgrades in line with this play provision strategy, and I don't know why we are moving away from this. So I would urge all councillors to support what is in the play provision strategy. Don't deviate from our long-term financial plan or our projects or our other plans, and vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Under point 7.15 of the standing orders, may I please make a personal explanation as to the comments that Councillor Sweeney just made?
Yes, you can under the standing orders.
Thank you. I would just like to remind Councillor Sweeney that I personally moved an amendment last time we had a similar issue with the playground on Gianardi Ramble to use the play provision strategy to fund a new playground in Canning Vale, and unfortunately that wasn't supported by Council. Therefore, I don't see how the relevance of Rossmoyne actually even has here, because we are talking about Shelley and Riverton. So I think we made it very clear in our explanations that that money should be reinvested if it's there. Obviously, if there was money available through an LRCI program, as it was with the Gianardi Ramble one, I would certainly advocate, as I have done and will do, for more playgrounds in Canning Vale.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, you have a question?
Yeah, just through you to Director Bride. I'm not sure if Councillor Sweeney just read those in alphabetical order or not, but does the play provision strategy actually stipulate the priority of where the additional playgrounds or even the removal of playgrounds should be?
Director Bowe? We don't have the ability to answer that question right here at the moment. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak before I close debate on the matter? Thanks, councillors. Look, I won't keep you. I just want to say just a few things on this. Look, just my own take on it, and I don't mean this as a, you know, I don't want to criticise anybody, but I think we're getting a bit caught up with what a strategy is. So a strategy is not a written law. It provides a baseline, an intent, a philosophy that we should follow, but it's not a written law. We are able to step slightly outside of it, but maintain that intent. And we've done that a number of times with a range of strategies. And in fact, by following the officer's recommendation, we've ignored the fact that it's actually part of the land utilisation strategy. That's where this block of land has been sitting for a long time. And ever since I've got on council, I think from 2015, it's regularly cropped up as one of the blocks of land that is surplus to needs. And I think also that, you know, council, we need to understand that selling a plot of land doesn't mean that we can't buy plots of land. So this plot of land, if you haven't driven past it, is almost butting up against Leach Highway. It's not in a great location for a playground or I wouldn't have thought any other use. So by selling the land and disposing of it and actually retaining the value in it, we get the opportunity at some time down the track, if an opportunity comes up, to purchase a plot of land that might be of more benefit. And in fact, during our term in council, we've actually used public money to buy plots of land, public open space, to increase the public open space. I think from memory it was in Queen's Park or possibly East Cannington, and we've done that. And perhaps at times we've stepped outside of policy, or not policy, but strategy to do so. One other thing Mr O'Connor mentioned, and this is what we are actually doing tonight, we are publicly going to land bank this, and we've had this sitting land banked for half a century now, and that's completely not consistent with what we're telling our own community that what we should do. If you happen to be a landowner in here with multiple properties and a vacant, unimproved block of land in the City of Canning, we are greatly increasing your rate, the rates for that property to encourage you not to land bank. And then tonight in a public meeting, the council has decided that we've got three residential blocks there on Barbican Street that really will return $1 million benefit back to the community that can be delivered somewhere else or invested somewhere else. But it's okay for us to change the rules and land bank it. I'm not sure what message that sends to the community, that we're okay land banking our own residential lots or potential lots, but if you happen to be a struggling person or somebody that's actually trying to make a living out in the suburbs, we're going to whack you with a premium additional rate and encourage you to sell it. I'm just not sure that that's what we should be doing. My view has always been with the land utilisation strategy is that the city should be looking at lazy, underperforming assets which provide no direct benefit, and we should be looking at buying and selling and trading those up so that when an opportunity for subsequent councils or this council or in 20 years' time comes up, we have sufficient money in reserves to invest this money into a better asset. So at the moment we're fortunate, just for the time being, that money in those reserves is attracting a really solid rate of return. And so I would think that in the short term, while this market is hot, we should dispose of this block of land that's been sitting there on the land utilisation strategy since Adam was a boy, and a block of land that's been owned by the city for at least 60 years. And I think it's about time that we let go an asset that is providing no benefit to this community and understand what has already been said, that in my view there's plenty of public open space already in that area. And yes, it is. It's a valuable piece of land, and that was brought up about how valuable this piece of land is and the demand for land like this. And in rebuttal, I would say the reason for that is there's a very fine private school only 200 metres from there. So I would think if we put this this item to public auction, to private treaty, that we will get an extraordinarily good price today. But where we might be in 5 years' time or 3 years' time, we might all be looking back, or subsequent councils looking back at the opportunity we had in 2023 in a hot market to trade up, put the money in the bank, take the interest that's on offer, and then sometime down the track reinvest that into a more valuable piece of property, or put it to another use, as we have done previously by buying public open space. So disposing of this tonight is not a vote against democracy. It's actually, I think, good financial management. So I'll leave it to that. I hope that those who might have said that they're going to vote no might think after that rebuttal that maybe there's good cause to reassess their vote. Thank you, councillors. We'll put the officer's recommendation to the vote. All good.
Motion CC 1623 has been carried with 6 in favour, with Councillors Jacobs, Saberi, Second, Spencer Teo, and Deputy Mayor Kunze voting against.
Thank you, councillors. We move on to CC 017 of 23. The title of the report being Budget Review as at 31 July 2023 to adopt projects carried forward from 2022 and 2023. The officer's recommendation is on screen and requires an absolute majority. Thank you, councillors. The recommendation also appears on page 14 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? I'll move that from the chair. A seconder from the floor. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jacobs, thank you. I will say only that I support the officer's recommendation that council simply receives a carried forward schedule from year 2022 and 2023. That's all we're being required to do. Councillor Jacobs, you've got anything else to add?
Mr Mayor, I support the motion.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against? Thank you. Let's put the matter to the vote.
Motion CC 1723 has been carried unanimously by an absolute majority.
Thank you. We move to CC 018 of 23, monthly financial report for July 2023. The officer's recommendation is on page 33 of the agenda and is now on screen. Can I have a mover for that item, please? Thank you, Councillor Bain. Seconder? I'll second it from the chair then. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I note we are simply being asked to receive the monthly financial report for that period back in July 2023. And I also echo the sentiment of Councillor Bain and support the officer's recommendation. Does anyone wish to speak against the officer's recommendation? Thank you. We'll put the matter to the vote.
Motion CC 1823 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you for that. We move on. We have already dealt with CD 012 on page 66. That was dealt with earlier. We move to CD 013 of 23. The title of the report being Proposed Payment in Lieu of Parking Plan for the City Centre and Queen's Park Structure Plan areas and amendment to LP 08 Cash in Lieu for Parking in the Centre Zone. The officer's recommendation is that Council requests the Chief Executive Officer to make a submission in support of the draft WAPC Operational Policy 2.3 Planning for Public Open Space based on the reasons outlined in the report. The officer's recommendation is on page 83 of the agenda and is on screen. Just a mover, please, for that matter. Councillor Spencer-Teo?
I'm not moving it, but you said paid parking.
Did I say paid parking?
That's not correct, right?
I'm reading what I've got here. It should have just been
Payment in lieu of parking.
payment in lieu of parking, not paid parking. Thank you for picking that up. The officer's recommendation is on page 83. Can I have a
No,
move?
sorry. It's supposed to be the planning for public open space. It's got nothing to do with parking, correct?
Director?
Through Mr Mayor, I think the Mayor's running sheet refers to an older item. The correct title is in the agenda, which is the submission in response to the draft West Australian Planning Commission Operational Policy 2.3, Planning for Public Open Space.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm reading off my running sheet and I've got completely the wrong information in it. Director, can I get you to read the title of the report then? Actually, I'll read it. I've got it here. Submission in response to draft Western Australian Planning Commission Operational Policy 2.3, Planning for Public Open Space. Thank you. It appears on page 82 of tonight's agenda, and the recommendation appears on page 83 and is also, I hope, and it is, on screen. Thank you. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Spencer-Teo is a mover. Councillor Jacobs is a seconder. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. When LP 16 came to us, I didn't support it because I thought it was unfair that only 4 suburbs were included, and I thought the 10% was way too high. So I support this submission and hope that my fellow councillors will also do the same.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Councillor Jacobs.
I have nothing further to add. I support this motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against it? Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, I'm going to speak against it. I remember this when it came up quite well, actually, on the 15th of March last year. And Council resolved not to adopt LP 16. So I'm not sure why this is even before us. Well, I know why it's before us, but I'm not sure why councillors are going to change their mind on this. In fact, you, Mr Mayor, came out strongly and said that it was un-Australian. So I will be interested to see how you vote on this.
I don't know why you'd be
There
interested
was-
to see how I vote on it, Councillor, and how I vote on it really is irrespective, so please just keep your comments relevant. It's a new item, we did review it.
Can I go
Have you
on,
read the
Mr. Mayor?
report? You've read the report, Councillor?
Are you asking me a question?
I'm asking you a question, yes. Have you read the report?
I thought I was speaking on behalf of.
Well, you're
the
making
amendment.
comments in relation to how I might vote, so I'm just asking,
I
as
just
you
said,
seem
I
to be
just-
unclear.
I'm just interested.
Thank you, keep speaking.
So, thank you. Back then, there was a consensus around the room that the intention was penalising people through no fault of their own, and making ratepayers pay now for the mistakes of the past was simply unfair, and most people in the room agreed to it. In fact, I think the vote was 7-3. So, I think, speaking against the motion, charging ratepayers a contribution fee or a tax for public open space has its drawbacks. I think it discourages development, which leads to a reduced housing supply and higher prices. It impacts affordability by increasing development costs, leading to higher housing prices. It also disproportionately impacts individual property owners, especially those with limited resources, and makes it less affordable for residents and deters potential buyers. It's quite simply a double tax, which is in addition to the rates they already have to fund for other various municipal services. Instead, alternative funding sources for public open space like grants or partnerships should be considered to ensure a fair and a balanced approach to community development and not hit the ratepayers up again. So I would encourage all councillors to do what councillors did last year and resolve not to adopt this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? Deputy Mayor.
I just got a question through you to Director Bride. Is not what has been proposed facilitating a more equitable outcome by broadening it and potentially reducing the percentages in POS contributions rather than putting it onto a few people that we were discussing in LP16? Isn't this actually more equitable as opposed to what Councillor Sweeney has just said?
Director Bride, can you provide some narrative around that?
Yeah.
Because that was the allegation that was raised.
Yeah, look, this particular policy applies statewide, and it tries to separate the greenfield or the fringe urban areas in contrast to the urban infill areas. So it's got a default 5%, which applies to every residential lot in the Perth metropolitan area. So it is all about having a consistent approach in infill areas, recognising when the initial 10% requirement was established back in the 1950s, the population density was quite low. Over time, that population density has increased, and the recommended target of 3.36 hectares per 1,000 persons is now not being achieved more broadly across the metropolitan area. So this is in response to the nuances of infill and the state's commitment to increase density in those areas to make Perth a more livable area. So it is more equitable in terms of applying to all residential lots.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, anything else? Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? I'd only make the point, councillors, I'll hand over to Councillor Spencer Teo to rebut, but this is, we're simply asking the CEO to make a submission in support of the draft WAPC operational policy. This is a statewide policy. It doesn't just apply to the City of Canning. So I'm not certain, I'm kind of not certain about the comments made by Councillor Sweeney, but I have a very different view on the report that was read. I will be supporting the recommendation as is. Councillor Spencer T, I'll ask you to rebut.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I just recall not so long ago Councillor Sweeney complaining that the area of Canningvale needs an additional 7 playgrounds. So I would certainly think, and I would hope that Councillor Sweeney would think that the developers or the users demanding these playgrounds in particular areas should contribute towards the playgrounds and public open space. It's the developers who pay. It's not the current ratepayers. So I think that needs to be made very clear. And what I do like about this policy is that, I guess, rather than selling land in Shelley to fund infrastructure in Canning Vale or Queen's Park, it's more localised. So it means that obviously if you develop in an area, you don't have a backyard, you contribute, whether it be 5%, 2% or 10%, towards the provision of public open space and playgrounds in that area, which you will be using, or those people purchasing those homes will be using. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. Let's put the matter to the vote.
Motion CD 1323 has been carried with 10 in favour and Councillor Sweeney voting against.
Thank you. We move on to the next item that will require Councillor Tuchek to leave the room, and for the record, he is leaving the room now. Thank you, Councillor Tuchek. The item is EN 015 of 23. The title of the report being Award of Tender RFT 03/2023, Street Furniture Services and Advertising. The responsible officer being Mr Warren Bowe, the Director of Infrastructure and Environment. As stated recently earlier in the meeting by the CEO, Councillor Tuchek has previously declared a financial interest in the item, and for that reason, under the provisions of the Local Government Act, he is required to leave the room. The recommendation is currently on screen and also appears on page 92 of the agenda. And I will move the item from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Spencer-Teo. I just will speak in support of the officer's recommendation. And look, can I just say from the outset, I was really pleased. I thank the city's officers for their support on this, and I mean that wholeheartedly. It was a difficult situation when council resolved not to accept the earlier tender back in March this year, and this council received some criticism at the time from certain areas about why we had taken that view, but as has been the theme of the discussion tonight, it has always been the interest of this council to provide community benefit from everything we do without fear or favour. And so putting the matter back for a re-tender has, I believe, and from the report, provided a significant advantage to the city of Canning. And I'm very, very pleased that the outcome is in keeping with what we as a council had hoped would be the outcome of retendering for street furniture services and advertising. And there are also some other benefits involved in that. I understand why some aspects of the matter tonight are currently confidential, and they are around the confidentiality around the provision of the tender itself and how how the city arrived at the preferred tender option. Director Bowe, can I just ask you, we can't talk at all about the improvement on the previous tender. Can we talk about that at all?
No, we can't, Mr Mayor. The submitted price and the minimum licence fee prescribed by the recommended tender is commercial in confidence.
Thank you. I've spoken to the CEO about the matter, and I hope very much, because I think it's in keeping with the perception of the public that they would like these things to be, as Councillor Sweeney raised earlier, for us to be more open and transparent about these things. And I don't expect that the terms themselves and the advantage to the community, which I know is a significant advantage, should be kept from the community. I think people will rightly ask, and they may be people in the media, but they will rightly ask whether the decision made by this council back in March was of value to the broader community, and I hope that we can provide an answer to them. So I'll continue those discussions with the CEO, and I very much hope that we can release those details in coming days. Our seconder for this matter was, forgive me, it was Councillor Spencer-Teo. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
I have nothing further to add other than I support the recommendation, and I'm sure Director Bowe will be very happy to get this off his desk. Thank you.
He's smiling. I think that is an affirmative. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Councillor Sabiri, yes.
Thank you. I'll be voting in favour of officer recommendation, but personally, I feel it's disappointing that we're allowing advertising of junk food on our assets, and really, I think this shows that the pressure of change has to come from higher levels of government rather than local councils putting together piecemeal policies and trying to make a change. Probably we need more leadership from the top. State and federal probably should act in this instance. So but I will be supporting officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before we put the matter to the vote? Councillor Sabiri just raised a couple of matters, and I'll just say, since it's your last meeting, I still remember your impassioned plea in regards to Krispy Kreme on Albany Highway. So you've been very, very consistent with your view on this for years. And I remember on the same night the Deputy Mayor at the time voted in favour of it on the basis that his children love donuts. Those memories live with me for a long time. You're absolutely right in relation to leadership on the matter. I think whilst state government still allows that advertising on its own assets, and it is not illegal, I think perhaps that is a decision that should be made at federal and state government. But thank you for your comments, Councillor Sabiri. I won't provide any further on this. I hope for your support for this, and I wholeheartedly thank the City again for their work on re-tendering this matter. Thank you, councillors. Just waiting for one more vote, councillors. Oh no, there's one. We're missing one, aren't we? Thank you, governance.
Motion EN 1523 was carried with 10 in favour, noting that Councillor Tushek was absent during the voting.
Thank you. We'll just pause for a moment while we have Councillor Tuchek return to the room. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Tuchek. For the record, Councillor Tuchek has re-entered the room with a smile on his face. Thank you. We move to EN 016 of 23. Councillor Tuchek, just for your interest, since you weren't in the room, that matter was carried 10 in favour and none against. We move to EN 016 of 23, the title being Tender Award FM.035.179 bulk verge waste collection service. The officer's recommendation appears on screen. The recommendation is on page 104 of the agenda and is currently on screen. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor Jacobs, you are the seconder. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation and really pleased to see this new much needed hard waste collection initiative get to the tender finalisation stage. 98 resident complaints in 1 year about the existing bulk waste verge pickup service is unacceptable. The old service was no longer meeting community expectations, was a source of great frustration and no longer financially sustainable. When I mentioned to residents that the city will be moving to a new on-demand hard waste collection service, they're both very pleased and relieved. I hope that the officer's recommendation receives council's full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I've given this quite a considerable amount of thought. I think we do need to try something new. I hope that residents will appreciate that now they'll be able to order it on demand. So rather than fitting in with our cycle, they'll be able to do it when they need. So, yeah, I think the old system has served us well, but I think this could be more convenient to residents. And, you know, if they're moving house or they're doing something, it fits in with them, not fits in with us. I think it also takes a lot of pressure off us, and it may avoid, I don't know, lots of people driving around picking up stuff, which was recycling, but then again, I think there's better ways to do it. And this probably takes a lot of pressure off it takes away from the pressure of the peak and theoretically will spread it out over the long term. So I've given it thought. I think it's worth a try. I hope the residents like it, and I'd be keen to know how they enjoy it. I hope it's going to be a seamless process. I'm confident that it will be. So I support this. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Look, I'll just say just a couple of words just in relation to what's in front of us. I do support the officer's recommendation. Actually, I thank Councillor Bain for raising those complaints, and I always remember that we've got a special responsibility as custodians here of the Canning River Regional Park and the Canning River, that we have to remember we have so many residences that are located directly across the road from the Canning River Regional Park and the Canning River itself, and the amount of rubbish that is blown into that river or into those public open spaces from those the waste that is left on verges is just mind-boggling, and the stuff that we've seen dropped out there is just just awful. So I think we've actually come up with a holistic waste solution here. I look forward to seeing it working. I think it will work. It's worked elsewhere, and we will learn from that. And I want to also thank the city for its consideration of tip passes this year. The CEO and I and others have spoken about that for some time, and I'm glad that that gained to Guernsey. I think we need to provide a range of different solutions to waste, and we already have our white goods pickup on call. We have mattresses that can be picked up. We now have this additional bulk waste verge collection service, and we also have our tip passes. I think providing more service and more options is a way to mitigate the trouble that is caused by accumulating waste. So I think this is a good thing. I can't wait to see it implemented. Anyone else to speak? Councillor Singh, if I can hear you over the rain, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll speak loudly.
It's very loud, isn't it?
I'm actually very passionate about this one. I fully support the officer's recommendation. I would like to thank city officers for coming up with such a great innovative solution. This is a perfect example of doing more for less. We are improving the service while we are cutting cost. We just need to be brave and find the innovative solutions. So really thankful to the city officers, and I really hope you will extend this innovative approach to other services city is providing. So looking forward for better solutions and less cost. So this one, fully supportive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Anyone else wish to speak on this one before we put it to the vote? Let's do that then, councillors. We'll put the matter to the vote. Councillor Bain, no need for rebuttal. No one spoke against the matter.
Motion EN 1623 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. At item 13.5, there are no reports tonight. That is the Office of Dr. Sarah McQuaid, the Director of Customer and Community. We therefore move to item 14, which are motions of which previous notice has been given. The matter was discussed at last week's AB. It's in relation to notice of motion 004 of 23, and the title of that being Request for a Review of Pedestrian Safety Measures on Pine Tree Gully Road, Willetton, in the school zone adjacent to the Willetton Senior High School. I've put the nom, and I will move it obviously from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please, for that? Councillor Tushek, thank you. Councillors, I won't speak too long on this. I wanted to start again. I'm sorry to bore you with this. I wanted to thank Director Bowe and his staff for meeting me with the principal of both Burrendar Primary School and also the principal of the Willetton High School to discuss this matter. And I really want to particularly raise the interest of Councillor Tuchek and Councillor Sekon, who attended that meeting and also provided their own input into the issues down there. This whole matter exists because of a really tragic occurrence. Well, it could have been more tragic, that occurred some time ago when a young girl was struck on that crossing directly outside of the city of the Willetton High School. And to set context for this, the Willetton High School currently has 2,600 students. Next door, the Burrendar Primary School has another 600 students, and Castlereagh behind that has about another 85 students with special needs. That's an awful lot of pupils, isn't it, already? About 3,500 kids. And I know from speaking to Trevor, the principal at Willetton, that the new development there on site will see the Willetton High School reach numbers not seen before in public schools in Western Australia. In the next few years, they fully expect to have 3,100 kids on that Willetton Senior High School site. And that means that that precinct will have nearly 4,000 students directly across the road from the Southland Shopping Centre on a very busy street, Pine Tree Gully Road, and I think it's high time for review. And I think with this too, sometimes councils are criticised for waiting, standing back and waiting until something happens before they then come forward with a decision. And so I think in this instance, I really think it's a positive that council is stepping forward, understanding that a need arises and meeting that need before we're called forward and begged for some action by the community. And I hope that the community will applaud that decision. I thank the city's officers for taking the time to come down. People don't realise, oh gee, I wish I hadn't put that mint in my mouth. People don't realise that the crossing out front of the school is not actually a zebra crossing. It's actually not a crossing at all. It's a controlled crossing that is controlled by a crossing guard. But the reality is the crossing guards are only there early in the morning at the start of school and at the end of the day. But unfortunately, the year 11 and 12 cohort and the year 12 cohort specifically, which numbers about 400 pupils, they come and go from school all day, as do parents and staff. So it is not just a 8:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. issue or a 3 o'clock or 2:30 to 3:30 issue. And obviously, sometimes those crossing guards are not available. And what actually happens is teachers are not able to they're not able to do this. They're not able to step out there and control traffic. They've got no authority to stop traffic. And so kids are actually left to their own devices out there. There is not a waiting list of crossing guards that can come in an emergency. That just doesn't happen. And police officers certainly don't do that anymore. They simply cannot commit the time. So we run the risk that without this review, at times that really important zone, that crossing out front of this very big school is going to actually require some work because it will be unmanned, and that is a terrible outcome for this community. So whilst I really think and applaud the community for often stopping there, we only need really, don't we, one car that doesn't stop, as we saw recently, and the effects can be tragic. So thank you to Warren Bowe, the director here beside me, and others who are providing some input into a review at that site. And I'm hoping that that review will come back with a number of significant changes around signage to make that whole precinct far more visible to passing traffic, and to also consider a zebra crossing a real permanent crossing at that site, because we almost have the population of a small suburb sitting in the site of that school, and we need to be able to move them safely across the road. And we have seen already what can occur without controls and mitigations in place. So thank you again to those councillors. I very much hope for the support of council, and I am very willing to hear others on this matter. Councillor Tuchek, first cab off the rank as the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do support your notice of motion. I was a little bit annoyed that you got in first. So,
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. But I was able to go out and see Lexi after the terrible accident, after she had surgery and got out of hospital. And unfortunately, she was in a wheelchair. And the mum was in, her whole world has been turned upside down because she had to work, and it was on school holidays, and I saw that there was a ramp going up to the front door. So it's not that, that accident could have been far worse. But I'm grateful for the invitation that from the city staff, and Shannon and I was able to get out to the high school and see the crossing. I've had 4 kids go to that high school, so I know how large it is. I know how terrible it is at that time in the morning and the afternoon at crossing. So I look forward to the review when it comes up to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tuchek. Councillor Second, you had your hand up, and then I'll go to Councillor Singh, and then I'll go to Councillor Spencer-Teo. Councillor Second.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. I'm very pleased with this notice of motion by Mayor Hall, and I fully support it. During my campaign late last year and throughout my tenure as a councillor for the past 8 months, the traffic management issue around Willerton High School and Buranda Primary School has been a real concern for many of Councillor Tuchek and my constituents in Willerton. I'm keen to see this issue resolved as soon as possible. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank the CEO and Director Bo for working closely with the local schools and with the city councillors to find a solution for the safety and benefit of our local community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sekon. Councillor Singh.
Question, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you very much. This is a great notice of motion. I would like to ask CEO, if we are to extend this review to all the high schools within City of Canning, are we talking huge amount of cost, or because it's just a review, is it possible just some guidance? Based on that guidance, I may move an amendment to the motion.
I will just actually ask Director Bo to address that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we would prefer to properly scope this review and undertake that review in the fullness of time before we would look at broadening any review across the entire city. I think from my discussions with Mr. Mayor on this, it'd be important to get the review completed, submitted to Main Roads, given that they will have, in effect, the final say as to the recommended treatments and the determined treatments on the road reserve. So I would prefer to focus on this one and look at the scope and really refine the scope before we look more broadly.
I'd only say on that, to answer your question, since you asked the question, would be that because of the need here, this is a particularly dangerous crossing, and it'd be nice to get this one out of the way first and get it done quickly. By expanding that out to other schools, it's going to actually, I would think, elongate the process, and God forbid if something happened because we kicked this out by 6 months, because that's how long it might take to do the review. And I'm just clutching it, I'm just plucking a number out of the air there. So I think because we've actually had a serious accident there and we know what's happening at that intersection, and we know that there are actually mitigations that need to be done. I take your point. I think we could probably come back and review those others, but I think there's an inherent need right now because we've already had a serious accident that could have been a fatality, and just deal with this review at the moment. Did you want to speak to it, or are you happy with just that question?
I'll speak to it, Mr. Mayor. I definitely completely support this motion. It is my request to the city officers that once this review is completed, to please come back with a recommendation for the council to review other high schools as well. Whether it's high school A or B, we shouldn't really be differentiating. It's all kids, high school kids. If we are doing it for one school, we should do it for every school. And I take the point, there is an incident which has happened at this school. It is in immediate need of review, and it should happen, and we shouldn't delay that review. However, once this review is completed, we should look at other high schools as well. This is safety should be topmost.
I don't disagree. Of course, Director Bo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Singh, our staff, our engineering and traffic engineering staff are in regular contact with the large majority of schools across the entire city, primary schools and the secondary schools. We have undertaken reviews in recent times, implemented different parking and vehicle movement restrictions at a number of schools historically. We have a regular touch point with the large majority of schools, but your point's well made. I've made some notes as well, and we can take that request offline and revert back to the elected members after we've had a chance to discuss it as the administration.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the notice of motion and commend the principal for reaching out and contacting you, Mr. Mayor. I also agree with Councillor Singh. There are many other high schools, and I'm aware of
primary schools.
I'm aware of a meeting that's happening at Rossmoyne Senior High School to address similar issues. This is an issue when we have incredibly popular schools in the city of Canning, and unfortunately the infrastructure around those schools don't necessarily keep up with the demand for the schools. So although unfortunately we couldn't take a proactive, whether it be main roads or the state, with schooling, we couldn't take a proactive approach to Willerton Senior High School, but I'm really grateful and happy to know that we are doing that with the other schools to do our best to prevent any further incidences like this. So thank you again, Mr Mayor, and I 100% support the notice of motion.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before we put the matter to the vote? No need for me to say anything further. There's been no one speak against the matter. We'll put the final matter for tonight to the vote. Thank you.
Nom 004-23 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. At item 15, urgent business, there is none this evening. Item 16, confidential matters, there are none. At item 17, there being no further business, I now declare the meeting closed, the time being 8:10 p.m. I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance, particularly Councillor Sarah Sabiri. Thank you, Sarah, your final meeting. We'll see you at dinner in a short time. Thanks, everyone, and good night.